The silver chains burned like fire against Maya's wrists, but she had learned long ago not to flinch. Pain was an old companion now, as familiar as the empty ache in her chest where her wolf should have been. She stood on the wooden platform, chin raised despite the jeers echoing through the underground cavern that served as the Werewolf District's auction house. Stay strong, she told herself, the same mantra that had carried her through 18 years of rejection. They can sell your body, but they can't touch your soul. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the crowd, his words cutting through her thoughts like claws. Here we have a fine specimen, gentlemen. 18 years old, healthy, obedient. Perfect for labor or... His pause was deliberate, drawing out the implications that made Maya's stomach churn. Other purposes. Laughter rippled through the gathering, and Maya recognized some of the faces in the crowd. Pack members she'd grown up with, wolves who had once played with her before they learned what she was, or rather, what she wasn't. Sarah Morrison sat in the third row, the same Sarah who used to braid flowers in Maya's hair during summer festivals. Now she whispered something to her mate that made them both snicker. No wolf, no worth, her adoptive father's voice echoed in her memory, as sharp and cruel as it had been 3 days ago when he'd shoved her into the trader's wagon. At least this way you'll bring us something. Moon knows you've cost us enough over the years. Marcus Thorne had raised her for 18 years, fed her, clothed her, given her a roof over her head. But love? That had died the day she failed to shift on her 16th birthday, then again on her 17th, and finally on her 18th just last month. 3 strikes, and she was out, not just from his family, but from Pack society altogether. Bidding starts at 50 silver pieces, the auctioneer announced. Maya bit the inside of her cheek. 50 silver. That's what a lifetime of servitude was worth to them. Less than what they'd pay for a good horse. 50, called out Garrett Webb from the Moonstone Pack. Maya remembered him. He'd asked her to dance once at an inter-pack gathering, before he knew. His wife had died in childbirth 6 months ago, and his leer now made clear exactly what kind of help he needed around his house. 75. Another voice, another face from her past. The bids climbed slowly, 100, 125, 150. Each number was another nail in the coffin of her old life, such as it was. Maya closed her eyes and tried to imagine she was anywhere else. In the forest behind the pack house, lying in the wildflower meadow where she used to pretend she could hear her wolf's voice in the wind. 200 silver pieces. Maya's eyes snapped open. That voice was new, unfamiliar. She scanned the crowd and found its source, a hooded figure in the very back of the cavern, shrouded in shadows where the torchlight couldn't reach. A murmur went through the crowd. 200 was serious money, more than most of these wolves saw in a year. 225. Garrett countered, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. 500. The hooded stranger's voice cut through the cavern like a blade, calm and absolute. The auction house fell silent. Even the auctioneer's practiced composure cracked as he stared toward the back of the room. 500 silver pieces could buy a small house, a year's worth of supplies for an entire family. The auctioneer cleared his throat. 500 silver, going once. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Who would pay that much for a wolfless girl? And why did something about that voice make her skin prickle with an awareness she'd never felt before? 600. Garrett's voice cracked with desperation, but even he seemed to know he was fighting a losing battle. 1,000. This time the stranger didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice carried across the cavern with quiet authority, and Maya felt something deep in her chest respond to it, a flutter, like the ghost of wings she'd never had. The crowd erupted in whispers. Someone whistled low. Even the guards shifted nervously, hands moving to their weapons. 1,000 silver pieces, the auctioneer repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Going once, going twice. Maya found herself holding her breath. 1,000 silver pieces. More money than her adoptive family had ever seen. More than she was worth, more than anyone was worth, really. The rational part of her mind wondered if she should be grateful or terrified. Sold. The auctioneer's hammer came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo in Maya's bones. The crowd began to disperse, some grumbling, others casting curious glances at the mysterious bidder. Maya watched as the hooded figure rose from his seat and began walking toward the platform, moving with a fluid grace that made her think of hunting cats. Each step he took closer made that strange flutter in her chest grow stronger. By the time he reached the base of the platform, Maya felt like she might vibrate right out of her skin. The auctioneer was speaking, something about payment and contracts and transfer of ownership, but Maya couldn't focus on the words. All her attention was fixed on the man below her, on the way his presence seemed to fill the space around him despite the concealing hood. He handed over a leather pouch that clinked with the weight of coins, signed whatever papers the auctioneer shoved at him, and then finally, he looked up at her. "Come," he said simply. Maya's legs moved without conscious thought, carrying her down the platform steps. The silver chains made each movement awkward, but she managed not to trip. When she reached the bottom, he was waiting. Up close, she could see more details despite the hood. A strong jaw shadowed with dark stubble. Lips that looked like they rarely smiled. And something else, a sense of barely contained power that made her wolfless senses scream in recognition of a predator. "Turn around," he commanded softly. Maya hesitated for a heartbeat, then obeyed. She felt him move behind her, heard the soft whisper of metal on metal, and then the silver chains fell away from her wrists. The relief was immediate, the burning sensation faded, leaving only the memory of pain. She turned back to face him, rubbing at the raw marks on her skin. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. Whatever he was looking for, he seemed to find it, because something shifted in his posture. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached up and pulled back his hood. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She knew that face. Every werewolf in the territory knew that face, even if they'd never seen it in person. It had been described in warning stories, whispered about in the darkest corners of pack meetings, featured on wanted posters in every alpha's office. Kael Blackthorne. The rogue alpha. The wolf who had turned his back on pack law and carved out his own territory in the wilderness. The man who had killed 3 alphas in single combat and whose very name made even the strongest wolves check their doors twice at night. And he had just bought her for 1,000 silver pieces. "Impossible," he breathed, his dark eyes locked on her face. His voice held a note of wonder that seemed completely at odds with his fearsome reputation. "You're supposed to be dead." Before Maya could ask what he meant, something extraordinary happened. Deep in her chest, in that hollow space where her wolf should have been, something stirred. It was small at first, barely more than a whisper of sensation. But as Kael continued to stare at her with those impossibly dark eyes, it grew stronger. Like embers being blown back to life, like a flower blooming in fast forward, like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Maya gasped and pressed a hand to her chest, staggering back a step. What's happening to me?" Kael's eyes widened, and she caught a flash of something, gold, in their depths. "Your wolf," he said, his voice barely audible. "She's waking up." The sensation in Maya's chest pulsed stronger, and for the first time in her life, she heard something that wasn't her own voice in her head. It was wordless but unmistakable, a presence, an awareness, a piece of herself she'd thought was lost forever. "Hello," it seemed to whisper. "I've been waiting." Maya's legs gave out, and she would have hit the ground if Kael hadn't moved with inhuman speed to catch her. His arms were strong and warm, and being held against his chest made her newly awakened wolf purr with contentment. "Easy," he murmured against her hair. "I know it's overwhelming. But you're safe now. You're finally safe." Safe. Maya had never associated that word with herself before. She was the pack reject, the girl without a wolf, the burden that had finally been sold off like unwanted livestock. How could she possibly be safe in the arms of the most dangerous rogue in the territory? But as Kael lifted her easily and carried her toward the cavern exit, as her wolf settled contentedly in her chest for the first time, Maya found herself believing him. Behind them, the auction house had fallen completely silent. Maya turned her head to look back and saw every remaining person frozen in place, their faces pale with shock. They had just witnessed the impossible, a wolfless girl's dormant wolf awakening at the touch of the rogue alpha. They were already crafting the stories they would tell, the rumors they would spread. But Maya found she didn't care about their whispers or their shock. For the first time in her life, she felt complete. The empty ache in her chest had been filled by something warm and wild and wonderful. As they stepped out into the cool night air, Kael looked down at her with those dark, mysterious eyes. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya," she whispered. He nodded, as if that confirmed something he'd already suspected. "Maya," he repeated, and the way he said it made it sound like a prayer. "I'm Kael. And I have so much to tell you." Above them, the full moon hung in the star-scattered sky, and Maya's newly awakened wolf lifted her head to howl, a sound of pure joy that echoed across the wilderness and announced to the world that she was finally, truly alive. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. The motorcycle rumbled beneath Maya like a mechanical heartbeat as they sped through the darkness. She pressed closer to Kael's back, her arms wrapped around his waist, trying not to think about how right it felt to touch him. The leather of his jacket was worn soft beneath her cheek, and his scent, pine and rain and something indefinably wild, made her newly awakened wolf stretch contentedly in her chest. They'd been riding for over an hour, leaving the auction house far behind and venturing deep into territory Maya had never seen before. The familiar landmarks of her childhood had given way to dense forest and winding mountain roads that seemed to exist outside of any map she knew. "Where are we going?" she called over the engine noise. "Home," Kael replied, and something in his voice made that simple word sound like a promise. Maya's wolf stirred at the word. Home. She'd never really had one of those. The Thorn Pack house had been shelter, but it had never been home. Not when every day reminded her of what she lacked, what she'd never be. The bike began to slow, and Maya looked around in confusion. They were surrounded by towering pines and granite cliffs, with no sign of civilization anywhere. But then Kael guided the motorcycle between two massive boulders, and suddenly they were riding through what looked like a hidden pass. On the other side, Maya's breath caught. Nestled in a valley that shouldn't have existed, lit by torches and the glow of a dozen campfires, was a settlement unlike anything she'd ever seen. Buildings crafted from stone and timber blended seamlessly with the natural landscape, as if they'd grown from the earth itself rather than been built upon it. Gardens wound between the structures, and she could see the glimmer of a river cutting through the center of it all. But it was the people that made her wolf sit up and take notice. As Kael parked the bike near what looked like a stable, figures emerged from the buildings and shadows. Men and women of all ages, some bearing the telltale scars of rogues, others walking with limps or missing limbs that spoke of battles fought and survived. A few stayed in the shadows entirely, their forms more wolf than human even in their bipedal shapes. "Welcome to Haven," Kael said, helping Maya off the bike. His hand lingered on her waist, sending warmth shooting through her entire body. A woman approached them, her silver hair gleaming in the torchlight. She walked with a cane, and Maya could see that her left leg ended at the knee, but there was nothing broken about the fierce intelligence in her green eyes. "So," the woman said, looking Maya up and down with obvious curiosity. "This is what 1,000 silver pieces looks like." "Elena." Kael's voice held a warning note. Elena just smiled. "Relax, Alpha. I'm not questioning your judgment. I'm just wondering what makes this one so special." She extended a scarred hand to Maya. "I'm Elena Cross, Kael's second-in-command and the pack's healer. And you, little wolf, are causing quite a stir." Maya shook the offered hand, surprised by the strength in Elena's grip. "I don't understand. I'm nothing special. I'm just..." "Just what?" Elena interrupted. "Wolfless? Powerless? Worthless?" She clicked her tongue. "Child, if you believe that, then Marcus Thorne did a better job breaking you than I thought." The casual mention of her adoptive father's name made Maya flinch. You know him? I know of him, Elena said, her voice cooling. And I know what he did to you. What they all did. She looked at Kael. Show her to the guest quarters. Let her rest. Tomorrow we'll see what she's really made of. As Elena limped away, Maya turned to Kael in confusion. I don't understand any of this. Why did you pay so much for me? Why bring me here? And how does she know about the thorns? Kael was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her face. Walk with me, he said finally. He led her through the settlement, and Maya marveled at what she saw. This wasn't the rough camp she'd expected from stories about rogue packs. The buildings were well constructed and maintained, the gardens flourishing, the whole place humming with purposeful activity despite the late hour. More importantly, the people they passed didn't stare at her with pity or disgust. Some nodded politely, others smiled, and a few called out greetings to Kael. But none of them looked at Maya like she was broken. This place, she said softly. It's beautiful. It's a sanctuary, Kael replied. For wolves who don't fit into the traditional pack structure. The rejected, the damaged, the different. He stopped walking and turned to face her. Like you. Maya's chest tightened. So you bought me out of pity? Because I'm another broken toy for your collection? No. His voice was sharp enough to cut. I bought you because you're not broken, Maya. You never were. He reached out slowly, as if approaching a skittish animal, and cupped her face in his hands. I bought you because I've been looking for you my entire life. Before Maya could ask what that meant, her wolf suddenly pressed forward, making her gasp. The sensation was stronger now, more insistent, and she could swear she felt an answering call from Kael's wolf. The awakening, he murmured, his thumb stroking across her cheekbones. It's accelerating. Your wolf knows she's home. But I don't understand. You will. He dropped his hands and stepped back, and Maya immediately missed his touch. But first, you need to complete the change. You need to shift. Terror shot through her. I can't. I've tried 1,000 times. I can't shift because I don't have. You do have a wolf, Kael interrupted. She's been dormant, suppressed, but she's there. I can smell her on you, Maya. Wild honey and starlight. Maya stared at him. That's impossible. Is it? He tilted his head, studying her. Tell me, did you ever feel different as a child? Before your 16th birthday, before the rejection started? Memories flashed through Maya's mind. Dreams of running through forests on 4 legs. Times when she could predict the weather hours before it changed. Moments when she'd known exactly where to find the best berries, the clearest streams, as if some inner compass guided her. Maybe, she whispered. Your wolf was there, Kael said with certainty. But someone, or something, suppressed her. Hid her so deep you couldn't find her. His expression darkened. The question is why. He began walking again, leading her toward a circular clearing at the heart of the settlement. Ancient stones formed a ring in the center, worn smooth by countless years and glowing faintly with their own inner light. What is this place? Maya asked. A shifting circle, Elena's voice came from behind them. Maya turned to see the older woman approaching, carrying what looked like an ornate wooden box. Very old magic. It helps reluctant wolves find their true forms. Maya's newly awakened wolf whined in her chest, a sound of both longing and fear. What if it doesn't work? What if I really am just? Then nothing changes, Kael said simply. But if I'm right? He looked at Elena, who nodded grimly. If I'm right, everything changes. Elena opened the box, revealing bottles filled with shimmering powders and liquids that seemed to move of their own accord. Step into the circle, child. Maya's legs felt like lead, but she forced herself to move forward. The moment she crossed the threshold formed by the ancient stones, power hummed through her body like an electric current. Her wolf stirred more strongly than ever, pressing against the barriers that had kept her caged for so long. Now what? Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. Elena began sprinkling the contents of her bottles around the circle's perimeter, muttering words in a language Maya didn't recognize. The air grew thick with magic, and the stones began to glow brighter. Now you let go, Kael said, moving to stand just outside the circle. Stop fighting. Stop trying to be what they told you to be. Just, let go. Maya closed her eyes and tried to do as he said. For 18 years, she'd held herself rigid, trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for her. Trying to be the daughter Marcus Thorne wanted, the pack member her peers expected, the normal girl she'd never been. What if she stopped trying? The moment the thought crossed her mind, something deep inside her broke open. Not broke like something damaged, but broke like dawn breaks across the horizon, sudden, brilliant, inevitable. Her wolf surged forward with a joy so pure it brought tears to Maya's eyes. The shift that followed was unlike anything she'd heard described. Usually, first shifts were painful, awkward, a struggle between human and wolf consciousness. But Maya's transformation felt like coming home. Her bones lengthened and reformed without pain, her muscles rippled and strengthened, her senses exploded with new awareness. When it was over, she stood on 4 legs in the center of the circle, and everything was different. She could smell things she'd never noticed before, the distinct scent signatures of every person in the settlement, the rich loam of the forest floor, the promise of rain on tomorrow's wind. She could hear conversations happening in buildings hundreds of yards away, the scratch of small creatures in the underbrush, the whisper of wind through pine needles. But it was Elena's sharp intake of breath that made Maya look down at herself. Her fur was pure white. Not the dirty cream of an aging wolf, not the pale gray of winter coats, but brilliant white like fresh snow, like starlight made solid. It seemed to glow in the circle's light, and when she moved, it shimmered as if each individual hair contained its own spark of magic. Impossible, Elena breathed. Maya tried to shift back to human form, and to her amazement, it worked. She stood naked in the circle, but someone had already thrown a blanket around her shoulders. She looked up to find Kael staring at her with an expression of awe and something that might have been fear. What does it mean? Maya asked. The white fur? Elena and Kael exchanged a loaded look. There's an old prophecy, Elena said slowly. Ancient. Most packs have forgotten it, but what? Kael's voice was barely audible when he spoke. The white wolf will either unite the packs or destroy them all. The words seemed to echo in the suddenly silent clearing, carrying a weight that made Maya's knees weak. Around them, she realized that every member of Haven had gathered, drawn by the light of her transformation. They were all staring at her with expressions of wonder and terror. That's just a story, Maya whispered. It can't be real. Your white wolf is real, Kael said grimly. And if the prophecy is true. He ran a hand through his dark hair. Maya, you may be the most powerful wolf alive. Or the most dangerous. Maya sank to her knees in the center of the circle, the blanket clutched around her shaking form. Her whole life had been turned upside down in the space of a few hours. From wolfless reject to white wolf of prophecy, it was too much to process. But as she looked around at the faces surrounding her, she realized that whether she wanted it or not, everything had just changed. The question was, would she unite the wolf packs, or would she be the instrument of their destruction? Only time would tell. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, in a bed that smelled of cedar and mountain air instead of the musty dampness of the Thorne pack house. For a moment, she lay still, letting the memories of the night before wash over her, the auction, Kael, the transformation that had changed everything. Her wolf stirred contentedly in her chest, no longer the faint whisper she'd become accustomed to, but a strong, steady presence that felt as natural as breathing. The white wolf. The prophecy. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Maya? Are you awake? Kael's voice sent warmth flooding through her. Come in. He entered carrying a tray of food and fresh clothes, his dark eyes immediately finding hers. In the morning light, she could see details she'd missed the night before, the small scar along his jawline, the way his black hair caught hints of blue, the careful control he maintained over his movements as if he was constantly aware of his own strength. "How do you feel?" he asked, setting the tray on the small table by the window. Maya sat up, pulling the blanket around herself. "Different. Like I'd been wearing clothes that were too small my whole life, and someone finally gave me something that fits." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "That's a good way to describe it." He grew serious. "We need to talk. About who you really are." "I know who I am," Maya said, though even as the words left her mouth, she wondered if that was still true. "I'm Maya Thorne, the wolfless girl from the Creek Valley Pack." "No." Kael moved to the window, looking out at the bustling settlement below. "You're not. You never were." He turned back to her, his expression grave. "Maya, your real name is Lyra Silvermoon. You're the last surviving member of the royal bloodline." The words hit her like a physical blow. "That's impossible. The Silvermoon line died out 18 years ago. Everyone knows that." "Everyone knows what they were told," Kael corrected. "But the truth is different." He sat down on the edge of the bed, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. 18 years ago, Alpha King Aldrich Silvermoon and his mate, Queen Seraphina, ruled over all the wolf packs in this territory. They were good leaders, fair, just, beloved by their people. Maya found herself leaning forward, drawn into the story despite her disbelief. "But power breeds envy," Kael continued. "And there were those who wanted what the Silvermoons had. A coalition of ambitious alphas, led by a wolf named Magnus Blackwood, orchestrated a coup. They attacked the royal stronghold on the night of the new moon, when the king and queen's power would be at its lowest ebb. They were murdered," Maya whispered, understanding beginning to dawn. "Along with most of their court. The official story was that rebel rogues had attacked, that the entire bloodline had been wiped out. But there were rumors." His eyes met hers. "Rumors that the queen had given birth just days before the attack. That there was a baby, a princess, who had vanished." Maya's hands were shaking. You think I'm that baby?" "I know you are." Kael reached into his jacket and pulled out a silver pendant on a delicate chain. It was beautiful, shaped like a crescent moon with a star nestled in its curve, and it seemed to pulse with its own inner light. "This was your mother's. It was found around your neck when you were brought to the thorns." Maya stared at the pendant, and her wolf stirred restlessly. Something about it felt familiar, like a half-remembered dream. "How do you know all this?" "Because I was there," Kael said quietly. "Not at the attack, I was just a child myself then. But I was there when Elena and a few other survivors brought you to safety. I was there when the decision was made to hide you with a lower-ranked family, to suppress your wolf until you were old enough to survive what was coming." "Elena was there?" Maya's mind reeled. "She knew?" "She was your mother's closest friend and the royal healer. When the attack came, she managed to get you out while the stronghold burned." Kael's voice was heavy with old pain. The Thorne family had just lost their own newborn daughter to stillbirth. Elena switched the babies, gave you to them to raise as their own. It wasn't ideal, but it was the only way to keep you safe. Maya felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "So Marcus and Sarah, they're not my real parents." "No. Though I don't think Marcus ever suspected the truth. Sarah died when you were 5, remember? And Marcus is not a complicated man. He saw a child who couldn't shift, and he treated you accordingly." The casual cruelty of it made Maya's chest tight. "All those years of being told I was worthless, defective." "You were being protected," Kael said firmly. "The suppression spell Elena used was powerful, but it required you to believe you were ordinary. If you'd known what you were, if your wolf had awakened too early, Magnus Blackwood would have found you and finished what he started." Magnus Blackwood. The name tasted bitter on her tongue. "He's still alive?" He rules the territory now, calls himself the Wolf King. And he spent 18 years hunting for any trace of the Silvermoon bloodline. Kael's expression darkened. Which is why we need to train you, and quickly. Your white wolf is going to draw attention whether we want it to or not. Maya wiped her tears away, trying to process everything. Train me for what? To fight. To survive. To claim what's rightfully yours, if that's what you choose. He stood up, extending his hand to her. Get dressed. We start now. An hour later, Maya found herself in a large clearing behind the settlement, wearing leather training gear that Elena had provided. Kael had changed too, trading his jacket for a simple black shirt that showed off the powerful lines of his shoulders and arms. First lesson, he said, moving to stand in front of her. Your wolf form is incredibly powerful, but you can't rely on it alone. You need to learn to fight as a human, to use weapons, to think strategically. Maya nodded, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened when he stepped closer. Show me your stance, he instructed. Maya did her best to copy the fighting pose she'd seen other wolves use, but Kael immediately shook his head. No. You're thinking like prey. He moved behind her, his hands settling on her hips to adjust her position. Think like a predator. His touch sent electricity shooting through her entire body. Maya's wolf purred with approval, and she had to bite her lip to keep from making an embarrassing sound. Feet wider, Kael murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Lower your center of gravity. You're small, but that's an advantage if you use it right. His hands moved to her shoulders, positioning her arms. Good. Now, when someone attacks you, what's your instinct? To run? Maya guessed. Wrong. His hands slid down her arms to her wrists. Your instinct should be to strike first. Show me. Maya threw a hesitant punch, and Kael caught her fist easily. Again. Harder. This time she put more force behind it, but he still deflected it without effort. You're holding back, he said, circling her slowly. Why? I don't want to hurt you. Kael laughed, a rich sound that made her stomach flutter. Maya, you're the daughter of the most powerful alpha bloodline in history. I'm a rogue who's killed 3 pack leaders in combat. Trust me, you're not going to hurt me. Something in his tone sparked her temper. Fine, she snapped, and threw a punch with real force behind it. This time, when Kael moved to block it, she was ready. She twisted away from his grab and came back with her other fist, catching him in the ribs. He grunted in surprise and approval. Better. Again. What followed was the most intense hour of Maya's life. Kael pushed her harder than anyone ever had, forcing her to move faster, hit harder, think quicker. When she faltered, he was there to catch her. When she succeeded, his rare smiles of approval made her feel like she could conquer the world. By the time they moved on to wolf combat, Maya was sweaty, bruised, and more alive than she'd ever felt. Shift, Kael commanded. Maya closed her eyes and let her wolf take control. The transformation was easier this time, more natural. When she opened her eyes again, she was looking up at Kael from her wolf's perspective, the world sharp and bright with enhanced senses. Beautiful, he murmured, and something in his voice made her wolf preen. Then he shifted too, and Maya's breath caught. Kael's wolf was massive, coal-black with silver markings, and radiated the kind of power that made other wolves instinctively submit. But when he looked at her, there was no dominance in his stance, only respect and something deeper that made her heart race. They circled each other, and Maya marveled at how natural this felt. Her wolf knew what to do, how to move, how to read his body language and respond accordingly. When he lunged, she dodged. When she attacked, he countered. It was like a deadly dance, and Maya found herself enjoying it far more than she should have. They'd been sparring for maybe 20 minutes when Elena's voice cut across the clearing. Kael. We have a problem. Both wolves immediately shifted back to human form. Kael was pulling on his shirt even as he strode toward Elena, Maya close behind. What is it? Kael demanded. Riders approaching from the south, Elena said grimly. Marcus Thorne and about a dozen warriors. They're flying Creek Valley colors, but... She paused, her expression troubled. Something's off about their scent. They smell like they've been rolling in Blackwood territory. Maya's blood turned to ice. Marcus is here? It gets worse, Elena continued. They're not alone. There's another group about a mile behind them, and those ones aren't bothering to hide who they serve. Kael's expression went deadly. Blackwood soldiers? Has to be. Elena looked at Maya with something like pity. Child, I think your adoptive father just sold you out for the second time. Maya staggered, the betrayal hitting her like a physical blow. Bad enough that Marcus had sold her at auction, but to lead Magnus Blackwood's men straight to her. How long do we have? Kael asked, already moving into crisis mode. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Maya watched as Kael transformed before her eyes from teacher to warrior, his entire demeanor shifting into something cold and lethal. Alert the pack. Emergency protocols. Maya. He turned to her, his dark eyes burning with intensity. Whatever happens, you stay close to me. Do you understand? Before Maya could answer, the sound of hoofbeats reached their ears. Through the trees, she could see riders approaching, Marcus Thorne at their head, his familiar face set in hard lines. Maya Thorne. Marcus's voice boomed across the settlement. I know you're here. You belong to Creek Valley Pack, and I'm here to take you home. But even as he spoke the words, Maya caught the lie in his scent. Whatever Marcus was here for, it wasn't to bring her home. It was to deliver her to her enemies. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. Maya watched from behind Kael as Marcus dismounted his horse, his weathered face a mask of false concern. The man who had raised her for 18 years looked exactly the same, graying hair, calloused hands, the perpetual scowl that had been her constant companion growing up. But now she could smell the lie on him, acrid and wrong. Maya, Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the settlement. Come home, girl. This rogue has filled your head with nonsense, but you belong with your real family. Real family? Maya stepped out from behind Kael, her newly awakened wolf snarling in her chest. You sold me, Marcus. Like livestock. Marcus had the grace to look uncomfortable, but his resolve didn't waver. I did what was necessary. What was best for everyone. His eyes flicked to Kael. Release her, Blackthorne. She's not yours to keep. She's not yours to sell, Kael replied, his voice deadly quiet. Not anymore. That's when Maya caught the new scent on the wind, something cold and predatory that made her wolf cower. Through the trees, more riders appeared. These weren't Creek Valley wolves. Their armor was black, their banners bore the blood-red wolf head of the Blackwood clan, and at their head rode a man whose very presence made the air feel heavy with menace. Magnus Blackwood was nothing like Maya had imagined. She'd expected a monster, scarred and brutal. Instead, he was handsome in a cold, aristocratic way, with silver hair and pale blue eyes that seemed to see everything. When those eyes found her across the clearing, his smile was like winter frost. Hello, little princess, Magnus called out, his cultured voice carrying easily. You've led us quite a chase. Maya's blood turned to ice. You. Me, he agreed, dismounting with fluid grace. Magnus Blackwood, rightful wolf king of these territories. Though I suppose to you, I'm just the man who killed your parents. The casual admission hit Maya like a physical blow. Beside her, Kael tensed, and she could feel the barely contained violence radiating from every member of Haven's pack. Did you really think I wouldn't find you eventually? Magnus continued, walking closer with the confidence of a man who'd never known defeat. 18 years I've been searching, following every rumor, every whisper of a lost Silvermoon heir. And all this time, you were hiding in plain sight with this fool. He gestured dismissively at Marcus. Marcus flinched but didn't back down. I kept my end of the bargain. I brought her to you. Bargain? Maya stared at her adoptive father in horror. What bargain? The same one I made 18 years ago, Marcus said, not meeting her eyes. Magnus knew there might be a survivor from the royal massacre. He's been paying me all these years to watch for any sign of unusual power, any hint that you might be more than you appeared. You've been spying on me my entire life? Maya's voice cracked with betrayal. I've been protecting these territories from the chaos your bloodline would bring, Marcus snapped, finally showing his true colors. The silver moons were weak, too soft to rule properly. Magnus brought order, strength. And you? He looked at her with genuine disgust. You're an abomination. A white wolf. Do you have any idea what kind of destruction you could cause? The only destruction here will be yours, Kael growled, stepping protectively in front of Maya. Magnus laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Ah, the infamous rogue alpha. Tell me, Blackthorne, how many of your little strays are you willing to sacrifice for this girl? As if summoned by his words, Magnus' soldiers spread out in a practiced formation, surrounding the settlement. Maya could see archers taking position, warriors with silver weapons that would burn any wolf they touched. Let her go, Magnus, Elena's voice cut across the tension as she limped into view, her cane steady in her grip. This doesn't have to end in bloodshed. Elena Cross, Magnus said with mock pleasure. Still alive, I see. Still meddling where you don't belong. His expression hardened. You should have stayed hidden, old woman. Now you'll die with the rest of these rogues. The only one dying today is you, Maya snarled, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. Something shifted in Magnus' pale eyes. There she is. There's the silver moon fire I've been waiting to see. He raised his hand, and his soldiers tensed. Take her alive. Kill the rest. The battle erupted like a dam bursting. Kael shifted instantly, his massive black wolf leaping toward the nearest Blackwood soldier. Around them, Haven's defenders scattered and regrouped, using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. Maya heard Elena shouting orders, saw Marcus backing away from the violence he'd helped orchestrate. But Maya stood frozen in the center of it all, watching wolves she'd begun to care about fighting for their lives because of her. A crossbow bolt whistled past her ear, and instinct finally kicked in. Maya shifted, her white wolf form blazing to life just as 3 soldiers converged on her position. What happened next was unlike anything she'd experienced during training. Power erupted from her like a dam breaking, raw and uncontrolled. The first soldier who reached her simply disintegrated. His scream cut off mid-breath as Maya's energy tore through him, leaving nothing but ash and the echo of his terror. The second soldier tried to retreat, but the power was spreading now, a wave of silver-white light that poured out of Maya's wolf form like liquid starlight. When it touched him, his body convulsed once before going limp, his life force simply snuffed out. Maya tried to stop it, tried to pull the power back, but it had taken on a life of its own. The third soldier, the fourth, 2 more who'd been trying to flank Kael, all of them caught in the expanding circle of her uncontrolled abilities. When the light finally faded, 6 Blackwood soldiers lay dead around her, and Maya stood in her human form, naked and shaking, staring at the destruction she'd caused. What have I done? She whispered. The battlefield had gone silent. Even Magnus was staring at her with something that might have been fear flickering in his cold eyes. Maya. Kael's voice was gentle as he approached, but she could see the wariness in his movements. It's okay. You're okay. I killed them, Maya said, her voice hollow. I didn't mean to, but You defended yourself, Elena said firmly, limping over despite the chaos still raging around the settlement's edges. They would have killed us all. But Maya couldn't hear her over the roaring in her ears, couldn't see past the ash that had once been living men. This was what the prophecy meant. This was why the white wolf would destroy the packs, because she was a weapon of mass destruction wrapped in the shape of a girl. I have to go, Maya said suddenly, backing away from Kael and Elena. I have to leave before I hurt someone else. Maya, no, Kael reached for her, but she was already running. She shifted mid-stride, her white wolf form streaking through the forest as she fled the battle, fled the destruction, fled the terrified faces of people who'd seen what she was capable of. Behind her, she could hear Kael howling her name, could hear Magnus shouting orders to pursue her. But Maya ran faster than she'd ever moved before, driven by guilt and terror and the growing certainty that everyone she cared about would be safer without her. She made it almost 3 miles before the trap closed around her. The net fell from the trees like a silver spider web, weighted with metals that burned her skin and tangled around her legs. Maya hit the ground hard, her wolf form forcing a shift back to human as the silver burned away her strength. Elite hunters emerged from the underbrush, Magnus' personal guard, trained specifically to capture supernatural prey. They moved with cold efficiency, securing the net, injecting her with something that made her limbs feel like lead. "Careful with her," their leader called out. "The king wants her alive and intact." Maya tried to speak, to shift, to call on the power that had just killed 6 men, but whatever they drugged her with made everything feel distant and muffled. She could only watch helplessly as they loaded her into a reinforced wagon and began the journey toward whatever fate Magnus had planned. The last thing she saw before the drugs pulled her under was Kael's wolf form charging through the trees toward them, Elena's desperate shouts echoing in the distance. Then darkness claimed her. Maya woke to the sound of dripping water and the smell of damp stone. Her head felt like it was stuffed with cotton, and every muscle in her body ached. When she tried to move, silver chains around her wrists and ankles reminded her exactly where she was. The dungeon was exactly what nightmares were made of: rough stone walls that wept moisture, a single barred window too high to reach, and the constant skittering of unseen creatures in the shadows. Maya was chained to the wall on a bed of moldy straw, wearing a rough prison dress that smelled of fear and despair. Awake at last. Maya's head snapped up to find Magnus standing outside her cell, still immaculate despite having traveled from the battlefield. He held a torch that cast dancing shadows across his aristocratic features. "Comfortable?" he asked with mock concern. "Go to hell," Maya rasped, her throat dry. Magnus chuckled. "Such spirit. Your mother had the same fire, right up until the end." He stepped closer to the bars, and Maya caught that cold, predatory scent again. "Do you know what I'm going to do to you, little princess?" Maya said nothing, but her wolf stirred weakly in her chest. "I'm going to drain every drop of royal blood from your body in a ritual that will transfer your power to me permanently," Magnus continued conversationally. "The blood of the white wolf, combined with my own strength. I'll be unstoppable. No pack will ever dare challenge me again." "The ritual will kill you," Maya said with more confidence than she felt. "That much power isn't meant for one person." "Perhaps. But I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven." His smile was sharp as a blade. "The ceremony begins at moonrise tomorrow. I do hope you'll try to make it interesting." He turned to go, then paused at the dungeon entrance. "Oh, and Maya? Your rogue alpha tried very hard to rescue you. Quite touching, really. Unfortunately, my soldiers had to cut him down when he wouldn't listen to reason." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. "You're lying." "Am I?" Magnus' laugh echoed off the stone walls as he climbed the stairs, leaving Maya alone in the darkness with her guilt and grief. Kael was dead. Because of her. Because she'd run instead of standing and fighting. Tomorrow, Magnus would complete his ritual and become unstoppable. And Maya was chained in a dungeon with no hope of escape. For the first time since her wolf had awakened, Maya felt truly powerless. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. Maya had been counting the water drops falling from the dungeon's ceiling for what felt like hours when the first explosion shook the fortress. Dust rained down from the ancient stones, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the clash of steel and the howls of fighting wolves. Her heart leaped with desperate hope. Kael. But Magnus had said he was dead. The cold certainty in the usurper king's voice had left no room for doubt. So who was attacking the fortress? Another explosion, closer this time, and Maya heard the unmistakable sound of the outer walls being breached. Through her small window, she could see the orange glow of fires burning against the night sky. Maya. The voice echoed down the dungeon stairs, rough with desperation and beautifully, impossibly familiar. Maya, where are you? Kael? Maya's voice cracked on his name. Kael, I'm down here. Heavy footsteps thundered down the stone steps, and then he was there, alive, magnificent, and covered in blood and soot. His dark eyes found hers through the bars, and the relief in his expression made her chest tight with emotion. Thank the moon, he breathed, producing a set of keys from his belt. I thought I was too late. Magnus said you were dead, Maya whispered as he unlocked her cell door. Magnus says a lot of things. Kael's hands were gentle as he worked on her silver chains, his touch sending warmth through her chilled body. Most of them are lies. The shackles fell away, and Maya threw herself into his arms, breathing in his scent of pine and rain and safety. For a moment, the dungeon faded away, and there was only the solid strength of his embrace. How did you find me? She asked against his chest. Elena tracked the hunters. We've been planning this rescue for 2 days. His arms tightened around her. Maya, when you ran. I've never been so terrified in my life. I killed those men, Maya said, pulling back to look at him. I lost control, and they just disintegrated. You defended your pack, Kael said firmly. You defended your family. That's what alphas do. Before Maya could respond, more footsteps echoed down the stairs. Elena appeared, followed by several of Haven's fighters, including Devon Marsh, one of Kael's most trusted lieutenants and a wolf Maya had grown fond of during her brief time at the settlement. We need to move, Elena said urgently. Magnus' reinforcements will be here soon. As they climbed out of the dungeon, Maya marveled at the destruction Kael's rescue force had wrought. The fortress's courtyard was a battlefield, with dead Blackwood soldiers scattered across the stones. Fires burned in several buildings, and the acrid smell of smoke filled the air. How many did you bring? Maya asked. Everyone, Kael replied grimly. Every wolf in Haven, plus some allies I called in from other rogue packs. We couldn't risk leaving anyone behind to defend against a counterattack. They fought their way through the fortress corridors, Kael and his warriors cutting down any Blackwood soldiers who tried to stop them. Maya stayed close to Elena, still weak from the silver and whatever drugs they'd used on her. Her wolf stirred restlessly, wanting to join the fight, but Maya didn't trust herself to shift. Not after what had happened in the forest. They were almost to the main gates when Magnus appeared. The usurper king stood blocking their path, flanked by a dozen of his elite guards. His pale eyes found Maya immediately, and his smile was cold as winter frost. Leaving so soon, little princess? He asked mockingly. But we haven't had our ceremony yet. The only ceremony you'll have is your funeral, Kael snarled, stepping protectively in front of Maya. Such devotion, Magnus observed. How touching. Tell me, Blackthorne, what are you willing to sacrifice for this girl? Before Kael could answer, Magnus' guards attacked. The battle that followed was brutal and chaotic. Kael fought like a man possessed, his sword cutting through Magnus' soldiers with deadly precision. Elena, despite her age and injury, proved she was still a formidable fighter. Devon and the other Haven wolves worked in perfect coordination, covering each other's flanks and pressing forward toward the exit. But Maya could see they were outnumbered. More Blackwood soldiers kept arriving, and Magnus himself was a formidable opponent, his own blade dancing through the melee as he sought to reach her. That's when something inside Maya snapped. She'd spent her whole life being protected, being hidden, being told she was too weak to matter. But she wasn't weak. She was a Silvermoon. She was the white wolf of prophecy. And she was done cowering while others fought her battles. Maya closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, past the fear and guilt, past the memory of the men she'd killed. She found her wolf, not the tentative, uncertain creature that had awakened in Kael's shifting circle, but the true white wolf, powerful and proud and absolutely unafraid. The transformation that followed shook the very foundations of the fortress. Silver-white light exploded outward from Maya's shifting form, but this time she was in control. Instead of the wild, destructive force she'd unleashed in the forest, this was precision incarnate. The light flowed around her allies, harmless as moonbeams, but when it touched Magnus' soldiers, they dropped their weapons and fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the pure power of her presence. Maya's white wolf form was larger than it had been before, more magnificent, radiating an authority that made even Magnus step back in awe. Impossible, the usurper king breathed. You're just a child. You can't have that much control. Maya shifted back to human form, standing naked and unashamed in the center of the courtyard. Elena quickly threw a cloak around her shoulders, but Maya's attention was fixed on Magnus. I'm not a child, she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute command. I'm the true heir to the Silvermoon throne. And your reign ends now. For a moment, Maya thought Magnus might actually surrender. His pale eyes held something that looked almost like respect as he studied her transformed presence. Then Devon Marsh stepped forward, and everything changed. I'm sorry, Kael, Devon said, his voice heavy with what sounded like genuine regret. But this has gone far enough. Before anyone could react, Devon grabbed Maya around the waist, pressing a silver blade to her throat. The metal burned against her skin, making her gasp in pain and surprise. Devon? Kael's voice was filled with shock and betrayal. What are you doing? What I was told to do 18 years ago, Devon replied, backing toward Magnus with Maya as his shield. Watch. Wait. Report back when the white wolf finally revealed herself. You're one of his spies, Elena said, her face pale with understanding. How long? Since the beginning, Magnus answered for him, his composure fully restored now that he held the advantage again. Young Devon here has been my eyes and ears in your little sanctuary from the very start. Did you really think I'd let a pack of rogues operate in my territory without keeping tabs on them? Maya felt sick. Devon had been at Haven when she'd arrived. He'd helped train her, had smiled at her jokes, had seemed genuinely pleased by her progress. And all along, he'd been working for the man who'd murdered her parents. The rescue, she said, pieces clicking into place. You let us escape. Of course I did, Magnus said, moving closer now that Devon had her secured. Do you think my fortress couldn't withstand an attack from a few dozen rogues? I wanted you to break free, little princess. I wanted you to use your power, to show me exactly what you're capable of. But why? Kael demanded, his sword still in his hand but useless with Maya held hostage. Magnus' smile was triumphant. Because the White Wolf isn't the only surviving royal bloodline. Oh, the Silvermoons were the strongest, the most prominent, but there were other royal families scattered across the territories. Distant cousins, minor nobility, children hidden away just like our dear Maya here. The blood drained from Maya's face as understanding hit her like a physical blow. You want to use me as bait, she whispered. I want to use your power as a beacon, Magnus corrected. Royal blood calls to royal blood, especially when it's this concentrated, this pure. With you as my captive, every hidden royal in 100-mile radius will feel the pull. They'll come to investigate, to rescue you, to claim their rightful place. His eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. And I'll be waiting to kill them all. Maya's newly awakened senses were already picking up the resonances Magnus described. Faint but unmistakable, she could feel other sources of royal power scattered across the territory, some as distant as the far mountains, others closer than she'd ever imagined. 3, maybe 4 other bloodlines, all unaware that their own power was now exposed because of her. You see? Magnus continued, observing her stricken expression. You understand now. Every royal who dies because of your carelessness, every innocent person caught in the crossfire, their blood will be on your hands. Maya, don't listen to him, Kael said urgently. We'll find another way. But Maya barely heard him. She was focused on the growing sense of danger she could feel approaching. To the north, something powerful was moving in their direction. To the east, another presence had begun the journey toward Magnus' fortress. The trap was already working. I can feel them, she said, her voice hollow with despair. They're coming. Because of me, they're all coming. Devon's grip tightened on her, and the silver blade pressed deeper into her throat. The king's plan is already in motion. Surrender now, and he might show mercy to your rogue friends. My mercy is legendary, Magnus agreed mockingly. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. Every choice she'd made since leaving the auction house had led to this moment. Her escape from the dungeon hadn't been a victory, it had been another trap, another manipulation in Magnus' grand design. She was the White Wolf of prophecy, the most powerful royal bloodline in generations. And she was going to be the instrument of every other royal family's destruction. Unless she found a way to turn Magnus' own trap against him. Maya opened her eyes, and when she looked at Kael, she tried to convey everything she couldn't say aloud. The plan forming in her mind was desperate, dangerous, and would require her to embrace the full extent of her power, consequences be damned. I'm sorry, she whispered, hoping he would understand. Then she called out to every royal bloodline within reach of her voice, her power amplifying the summons across impossible distances. Come quickly, her mental voice echoed across the territories. The White Wolf needs you. The hunt had begun, but Maya was no longer content to be the prey. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 6. The response to Maya's psychic call was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of her desperate summons, the forest around Magnus' fortress began filling with wolves from every corner of the territory. They came alone and in small groups, drawn by a compulsion they couldn't name but couldn't resist. Maya felt each arrival like a pulse in her blood, some carrying the faint but unmistakable signature of royal heritage, others simply drawn by the promise of change. Magnus had retreated to his stronghold with Maya still his prisoner, but his confidence was beginning to crack. Through the barred windows of her new cell, higher in the tower this time, harder to escape from, Maya could see his soldiers struggling to maintain control of the situation outside. You've made quite a mess, little princess, Magnus said, entering her cell with Devon still at his side. The blade at her throat had become a permanent fixture, silver burning against her skin as a constant reminder of her captivity. Good, Maya replied, meeting his pale eyes steadily. You wanted the hidden royals to reveal themselves. Congratulations, you got your wish. Magnus moved to the window, gazing down at the growing encampment below. Indeed. Though I must admit, I hadn't expected quite so many irregulars to answer your call. Maya followed his gaze and felt her heart swell with something that might have been hope. The gathering wasn't just royal bloodlines. Word had spread through the underground networks that connected all the territory's outcasts. Rogues, pack rejects, wolves with defects like her own had been. They came carrying makeshift weapons and determination born of desperation. In the center of it all, she could see Kael coordinating with Elena and several figures she didn't recognize. Even from this distance, she could feel the pull between them, stronger now than it had ever been, as if her psychic call had awakened something deeper than just her royal blood. Your rogue alpha is quite persistent, Magnus observed. 3 rescue attempts in 2 days. You'd think he'd learn. He doesn't give up on the people he cares about, Maya said quietly. How touching. Magnus turned back to her, his expression calculating. Tell me, what would you do to keep him safe? Maya's wolf stirred uneasily in her chest. What do you mean? I mean, little princess, that this siege is becoming inconvenient. All these wolves gathering outside my walls, making noise about the true heir and freedom from tyranny. His voice dripped with disdain. It's giving my subjects ideas I'd rather they didn't have. Devon's grip tightened on her, and Maya caught the scent of his nervousness. Even Magnus' most loyal spy was beginning to doubt this plan. So here's what's going to happen, Magnus continued. You're going to use that remarkable voice of yours to send those wolves away. All of them. And in return, I'll let your friends live. And if I refuse? Magnus smiled, cold and sharp. Then I start executing every defective wolf in my territory. The blind ones, the lame ones, the ones without proper shifts. Starting with that crippled healer of yours. His eyes glittered with malice. I wonder how long your conscience will let you watch before you give me what I want. Maya's blood turned to ice. Elena, all the wolves who'd found sanctuary at Haven, every outcast who dared to answer her call, Magnus would slaughter them all to force her compliance. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a king, Magnus corrected. And kings do what's necessary to maintain order. Before Maya could respond, a commotion in the courtyard below drew their attention. Through the window, she could see a new group approaching the fortress, but these weren't refugees or rogues. These wolves moved with military precision, their armor gleaming silver, their banners bearing symbols Maya didn't recognize. Ah, Magnus said, his voice holding a note of genuine surprise. It seems your call reached farther than expected. The newcomer's leader dismounted near Kael's position, and even from the tower window, Maya could see the tension in the meeting. Words were exchanged, gestures made, and then something extraordinary happened. The stranger bowed to Kael. Not the casual nod of one alpha acknowledging another, but the deep, formal bow given to recognized royalty. Interesting, Magnus murmured. It appears your rogue has been keeping secrets. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as understanding dawned. The pull she felt toward Kael, the way her royal blood resonated with his presence, the effortless authority he commanded, it wasn't just because he was a powerful alpha. He was royal too. Let me go, Maya said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. Let me end this. End this how? Single combat. You and me. Winner takes all. Maya met Magnus' gaze unflinchingly. That's the old way, isn't it? Trial by combat to settle disputes between royal bloodlines? Magnus laughed, genuine amusement in the sound. My dear child, you've been awake as a wolf for all of a week. I've been perfecting my skills for over 40 years. It would be murder, not combat. Then you should have no trouble accepting. I should have no trouble simply executing you right now, Magnus countered. Why would I risk single combat when I already hold all the advantages? Maya smiled, and for the first time since her capture, she felt truly confident. Because you're not just a king, Magnus. You're a usurper. And deep down, you know it. Every day you sit on a throne that isn't rightfully yours, every night you go to sleep wondering if today will be the day someone stronger comes to take it from you. She leaned forward despite Devon's blade. You need to prove you deserve to rule. And the only way to do that is to defeat the true heir in fair combat. Magnus' pale eyes narrowed, and Maya could see she'd struck a nerve. Besides, she continued, look outside. How long do you think your soldiers will keep fighting once word spreads that there are multiple royal bloodlines gathered against you? How long before your own people start questioning whether they're on the right side? Magnus was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the gathering storm below. When he finally spoke, his voice was deadly soft. Single combat. Tomorrow at dawn. But if you lose, when you lose, everyone dies. Every wolf who answered your call, every rogue who dared oppose me, every defective creature I can find. I'll make them watch your death, and then I'll slaughter them all. And if I win? You won't. But if I do? Magnus' smile was sharp as winter frost. Then I suppose you'll be queen of the ashes. He turned to leave, then paused at the cell door. Oh, and Maya? No weapons, no allies, no interference from your friends below. Just you, me, and the question of who was truly meant to rule. His expression grew thoughtful. Though I do wonder what your rogue prince will think when he learns you've agreed to what amounts to suicide. After Magnus left, Maya sank to the floor of her cell, the weight of what she'd just committed to settling on her shoulders like a stone. Devon remained, his silver blade still at the ready, but she could see the conflict in his eyes. Why? He asked quietly. Why agree to fight him? You have to know you can't win. Because sometimes the only choice is how you die, Maya replied. And I'd rather die fighting for something that matters than live as his prisoner. He'll kill you in minutes. Maybe. Maya looked out the window at the wolves gathering below, at Kael's dark figure moving among them like a general preparing for war. But maybe that's not the point. Devon frowned. What do you mean? Maya smiled, and there was something in her expression that made the spy step back despite himself. I mean that sometimes the most powerful thing a symbol can do is show people that it's worth dying for. She closed her eyes and reached out with her newfound abilities, not to call more wolves this time, but to send a message to one specific mind. The connection between her and Kael blazed to life, stronger than ever, and she felt his shock as her thoughts touched his. I'm going to face Magnus at dawn, she sent. Single combat. Don't try to stop me. His mental voice came back immediately, sharp with panic and fury. Maya, no. We'll find another way. There is no other way. He'll kill everyone if I don't do this. Then we'll all fight. Together. Maya's heart clenched at the fierce protectiveness in his thoughts. That's exactly what I'm trying to prevent. Too many people have already died because of me. Maya. I know what you are, she sent softly. I can feel your royal blood. Whatever kingdom you're from, whatever claim you have, we could have been something extraordinary together. The connection between them flared with an intensity that made her gasp. For a moment, she could feel everything Kael felt, his love for her, his desperate need to protect her, the mate bond that had been growing stronger with every day they spent together. We are something extraordinary, his mental voice was fierce. You're my mate, Maya. My true mate. I've known since the moment I saw you on that auction platform. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. True mates were rare, legendary, pairs of wolves whose souls were literally two halves of the same whole. It explained the instant connection, the way her wolf had awakened at his touch, the pull between them that grew stronger every day. Then you know I have to do this, she sent back. A queen protects her people. Even if it costs everything. Especially a queen who's found her king. Maya's breath caught. Kael. I love you, he sent, the words blazing across their connection with absolute certainty. Whatever happens tomorrow, know that. I love you too, she replied, tears streaming down her cheeks. I wish we'd had more time. She felt him trying to send more, but Maya gently closed the connection. She couldn't afford to lose her resolve, and every moment linked to Kael made her want to find another way, any way, to avoid the coming fight. But there was no other way. Magnus would never stop hunting royals, would never stop oppressing anyone he deemed defective or different. The only way to end his reign was to challenge it at its foundation. Even if that challenge killed her. Maya settled back against the cold stone wall and began to prepare for what would almost certainly be her last dawn. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. Dawn broke blood-red over Magnus' fortress, painting the gathering armies in shades of war and sacrifice. Maya stood in the center of the ancient stone circle that had been erected in the courtyard overnight, the same type of ritual space where she'd first shifted into her white wolf form, but this one reeked of dark magic and old blood. Magnus waited on the opposite side of the circle, resplendent in black armor that seemed to drink in the morning light. He looked every inch the conquering king, confident and controlled, while Maya wore simple leather fighting gear that Elena had somehow smuggled to her cell. Around them, thousands of wolves had gathered. Magnus' army lined the fortress walls and filled the battlements, their weapons glinting silver in the dawn light. Below in the courtyard and spilling out beyond the gates, the alliance Maya had called forth waited, rogues and outcasts, minor nobles and hidden royals, all united in their opposition to Magnus' reign. At the front of the crowd, Kael stood with Elena and the other leaders. Even across the distance, Maya could feel the mate bond thrumming between them, his strength flowing into her like a lifeline. Are you ready to die, little princess? Magnus called out, his voice carrying easily across the silent courtyard. Are you ready to face justice? Maya replied, stepping deeper into the circle. Magnus laughed, drawing his sword, a magnificent blade that hummed with its own dark power. Justice? Child, I am justice. I brought order to chaos, strength to weakness. When I kill you here today, it will be justice for every wolf who's suffered under the failed rule of your bloodline. Maya didn't draw a weapon. She had none. Instead, she let her wolf rise to the surface, not shifting but allowing the white wolf's power to flow through her human form. Silver light began to dance around her fingers, and she felt the collective intake of breath from the watching crowd. "Last chance," Magnus said, raising his sword. "Yield now, and I'll make your death quick." "Never." Magnus struck without warning, his blade cutting through the air with inhuman speed. Maya barely managed to dodge, the sword's edge passing so close to her throat that she felt the whisper of steel against skin. She rolled away and came up in a crouch, her wolf senses screaming danger as Magnus advanced with predatory grace. He was faster than she'd expected, stronger, and the dark power radiating from his sword made her skin crawl. "You're untrained," Magnus observed, stalking her around the circle's perimeter. "Powerful, yes, but what good is power without skill?" He lunged again, and this time Maya couldn't dodge completely. The blade caught her across the ribs, drawing blood and sending fire racing through her side. But as Magnus' sword made contact, something unexpected happened. Power flowed between them, not from Maya to Magnus as he'd intended, but the reverse. For just an instant, Maya felt his strength, his accumulated years of stolen authority, and underneath it all, the festering core of insecurity that drove him. Magnus stumbled back, his pale eyes wide with shock. "What did you just do?" Maya straightened, her wound already beginning to heal as white light danced across her skin. "Something you never expected," she said, understanding flooding through her. "You've been stealing power from others for so long, you forgot what it feels like to have someone steal from you." Around the circle, she could sense other alphas among the watching crowd, not just Kael, but the royal bloodlines who'd answered her call, the pack leaders who'd come to witness this confrontation. And flowing from each of them, she could feel threads of power that she could grasp if she chose to. "Impossible," Magnus snarled, raising his sword again. "You're a child. You don't have the knowledge for that kind of magic." "I don't need knowledge," Maya replied, silver light beginning to coalesce around her like armor. "I have birthright." This time when Magnus attacked, Maya was ready. Instead of dodging, she met his charge head-on, catching his sword barehanded. The blade should have cut through her palm like butter, but the white light surrounding her turned the steel aside as if it were made of paper. Magnus tried to pull back, but Maya's grip was like iron. She could feel his power flowing through the sword, the network of stolen strength he'd built over decades of conquest and murder. And she could feel how to unravel it. "You want to know the difference between us?" Maya asked, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent courtyard. "You take power from others. I give it back." She released her hold on the sword and placed her hand against Magnus' chest, directly over his heart. Power erupted from her, not the destructive force she'd unleashed in the forest, but something far more precise and infinitely more devastating. Every thread of stolen authority Magnus had accumulated over the years began to unwind. Maya could sense it flowing back to its rightful owners, strength returning to the broken alphas he'd defeated, magic flowing back to the bloodlines he'd tried to erase. Magnus himself began to age visibly as the borrowed power left him, his dark hair showing silver, his face developing lines that 40 years of stolen youth had hidden. "No," he gasped, staggering back. "You can't, this is impossible." But Maya was already reaching deeper, finding the core ritual that had allowed Magnus to steal power in the first place. It was ancient magic, blood magic, the kind that required sacrifice and left permanent stains on the user's soul. And like all such magic, it could be reversed. "You want a ritual?" Maya said, her voice echoing with otherworldly authority. "Let me show you what a real royal bloodline can do." She spread her arms wide, and silver light exploded outward from her position. But instead of random destruction, this was creation. She was weaving a new pattern over the old, unmaking Magnus' network of stolen power and replacing it with something clean and bright. Around the courtyard, she could hear gasps of wonder as wolves who'd been suppressed for years suddenly felt their true strength returning. Pack members who'd been forced into submission found their voices again. Even the stones of the fortress itself seemed to lighten as decades of oppressive magic were stripped away. Magnus fell to his knees, his stolen sword clattering uselessly to the ground. Please, he whispered, no longer the confident tyrant but just a frightened old man facing the consequences of his choices. Please, I can change. I can. You had 18 years to change, Maya said, her power building toward its crescendo. 18 years while you hunted innocent children and murdered anyone who opposed you. Now you face justice. She raised her hand, silver light gathering around her fingers like concentrated starlight. One touch, and Magnus would be stripped of every trace of supernatural power, left as mortal as any human. It would be a fate worse than death for an alpha, conscious existence without the wolf that defined him. But as Maya prepared to deliver the final blow, everything went wrong. A crossbow bolt whistled through the air, aimed directly at her heart. Maya saw it coming but was too deep in the ritual to dodge, too committed to the magic to break away. Kael's wolf form slammed into her from the side, knocking her away from the bolt's path just as it would have struck home. But the projectile, deflected by his intervention, punched through his chest instead, the silver head erupting from his back in a spray of blood. Kael! Maya screamed as her mate collapsed, his wolf form shimmering back to human as his life force ebbed away. Around the courtyard, chaos erupted. The crossbow had been fired by Devon, Magnus' spy, but Elena was already moving toward him with murder in her eyes. The assembled armies clashed as Magnus' soldiers tried to capitalize on the confusion, and the air filled with the sounds of battle. But Maya heard none of it. Her entire world had narrowed to Kael's still form, to the blood spreading beneath him, to the mate bond that was growing weaker with every passing second. No, she whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. No, you don't get to die. Not now. Not for me. Kael's eyes found hers, and she could see him struggling to speak. Maya, finish it. End this. I won't leave you, she said fiercely, pressing her hands against his wounds. White light flowed from her fingers, but the silver in the bolt was fighting her healing magic, making her power scatter and fade. You have to, Kael gasped. The people, they need you too. His words were cut off as he coughed up blood, and Maya felt something inside her break. All her life, she'd been told she was worthless, powerless, a burden to everyone around her. And now, the first person who'd ever truly seen her worth, who'd loved her not despite her differences but because of them, was dying because he'd tried to protect her. The rage that filled Maya wasn't human. It wasn't even wolf. It was something primal and elemental, the fury of a force of nature unleashed. When she looked up at Magnus, her eyes were blazing with silver fire that made the dawn's sun look dim by comparison. You want to see what the white wolf of prophecy can really do? Maya asked, her voice carrying across the battlefield and bringing the fighting to a stunned halt. Magnus tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Maya's power reached out like the hand of an angry god, lifting him off the ground and holding him suspended in midair. I am the daughter of Aldrich and Seraphina Silvermoon, Maya declared, her voice echoing off the mountains themselves. I am the last of the royal bloodline, the white wolf of legend, and the mate of the man you just had murdered. Power erupted from her in waves that shook the very foundations of the fortress. But this wasn't the controlled magic she'd been weaving moments before. This was devastation incarnate, the accumulated fury of every injustice, every cruelty, every life Magnus had destroyed over his blood-soaked reign. Magnus screamed as the power tore through him, but it didn't stop with his death. Maya's rage followed the lines of his bloodline magic, racing through every spell he'd ever cast, every curse he'd laid upon the land. Across the territory, wolves who'd been bound by his suppression magic suddenly felt their chains break. In dungeons and prison camps, his political prisoners found their cell doors standing open. The very ground beneath Magnus' fortress cracked and heaved as 40 years of accumulated dark magic was violently expelled. Buildings that had been constructed with slave labor crumbled to dust. Weapons forged with blood sacrifice shattered in their wielders' hands. When it was over, when Maya's rage finally burned itself out, there was nothing left of Magnus but ash scattered on the wind. His army had fled or surrendered, his fortress was reduced to rubble, and across the territory, the oppressive weight that had pressed down on every nonconforming wolf for nearly 2 decades had finally lifted. But none of that mattered to Maya. Because Kael was dying in her arms, and she had to choose. Her power, depleted from the massive magical working but still substantial, could save him. She could pour everything she had left into healing his wounds, keeping the mate bond strong, ensuring that the man she loved survived to see the new world they'd helped create. Or she could turn that power outward, to the hundreds of wounded wolves scattered across the battlefield. Kael's people, Magnus' former soldiers who'd seen the truth and switched sides, innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire, all of them could be saved if she spread her healing magic wide instead of deep. Save the man she loved, or save the people he'd died to protect. Maya looked down at Kael's pale face, felt his heartbeat growing weaker through their bond, and realized that this choice would define not just who lived and died today, but who she would become as a leader. The white wolf of prophecy could unite the packs or destroy them all. The choice was hers. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 8. Maya knelt in the rubble of what had once been Magnus' fortress, Kael's blood warm and wet against her hands, and felt the weight of an impossible choice crushing down on her. Around them, the moans of wounded wolves filled the air, hundreds of injured fighters from both sides of the battle, all depending on her power to survive. Through the mate bond, she could feel Kael's life slipping away like sand through her fingers. The silver bolt had done terrible damage, and even her considerable healing abilities might not be enough to save him. But if she tried, if she poured everything she had into keeping him alive, all those other wolves would die. Maya. Kael's voice was barely a whisper, his dark eyes struggling to focus on her face. Don't sacrifice them for me. I can't lose you, Maya said, tears streaming down her cheeks. I just found you. We're supposed to have forever. We will, he managed, his hand finding hers with trembling fingers. Just, not the way we planned. Before Maya could ask what he meant, Elena's voice cut through her grief. Child, there might be another way. Maya looked up to find the healer approaching, leaning heavily on her cane but moving with determined purpose. Behind her came several figures Maya didn't recognize, an elderly man with silver hair and kind eyes, a middle-aged woman whose very presence radiated ancient power, and others who carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of old magic. Who are they? Maya asked. The Council of Echoes, Elena replied. The last keepers of the old knowledge. They've been in hiding since Magnus' rise, but they came when they felt what you did to him. The silver-haired man stepped forward, his gaze moving between Maya and Kael with deep compassion. Your Majesty, he said, bowing formally. I am Aldwin Cross, Elena's grandfather and the last living member of the original Royal Council. We come with knowledge that might help. Knowledge of what? Of the true Luna, the woman beside him said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. I am Meredith Stoneheart, and I have lived long enough to remember the old ways, before the bloodlines became corrupted by power and greed. Aldwin nodded gravely. The white wolf of prophecy was never meant to be just another alpha, Your Majesty. You are the bridge between the old magic and the new, the one who can heal not just bodies but the very fabric of our people. I don't understand, Maya said, though something deep in her wolf stirred in recognition. The true Luna is a legend as old as our people, Meredith explained. Not bound by the limitations of pack hierarchy or bloodline politics. She draws power not from dominance but from unity, not from taking but from giving. The woman's ancient eyes fixed on Maya's. You have the ability to transform your royal power into something far greater, the power to heal all wounds, to restore all that has been broken. But the cost, Aldwin added gently, is that you would no longer be Silvermoon royalty. Your white wolf would become something else entirely, something the world hasn't seen for over 300 years. Maya felt her heart sink. And if I don't? If I keep my royal blood? Then you can save your mate or save the wounded, but not both, Meredith said sadly. Royal power is finite, bounded by bloodline and tradition. True Luna power. She smiled. That comes from the moon itself. Maya looked down at Kael, whose breathing was growing more labored with each passing moment. Around them, the cries of the wounded continued, and she could feel other lives slipping away even as she hesitated. What do I need to do? She asked. Are you certain? Elena asked, moving closer. Once you begin this transformation, there's no going back. You'll no longer be the lost princess everyone's been waiting for. I'll be something better, Maya said with sudden certainty. I'll be what our people actually need. Aldwin and Meredith began to chant in the old language, their voices weaving together in harmonies that seemed to resonate through the very stones beneath Maya's feet. The other council members joined them, and soon the air itself was thrumming with ancient magic. Open yourself to the moon, Meredith instructed. Let your royal blood flow back to the earth, and accept what the moon offers in return. Maya closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, finding the brilliant core of Silvermoon power that had defined her since her wolf's awakening. It was beautiful, silver and proud and carrying the weight of centuries of noble tradition. She let it go. The power flowed out of her like a river breaking free of its banks, but instead of leaving her empty, it created space for something else to flow in. Luna power, wild and ancient and vast as the night sky itself. It poured into her with a sensation like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. When Maya opened her eyes, she was no longer the white wolf of prophecy. She was something entirely new. Silver light poured from her in waves, but this wasn't the destructive force she'd wielded against Magnus. This was pure healing magic, washing over the battlefield and seeking out every injured soul. She felt Kael's wounds closing, his strength returning, his heartbeat growing steady and strong. But she also felt hundreds of other wolves being touched by her power, broken bones mending, torn flesh healing, even psychological wounds beginning to close. Impossible, someone whispered, but Maya was too focused on the magic to identify the voice. The transformation seemed to last both an eternity and an instant. When it was finally complete, Maya found herself kneeling in a circle of perfectly healthy wolves, all staring at her with expressions of awe and wonder. But it was Kael's face she focused on, Kael's strong hands helping her to her feet, Kael's voice saying her name like a prayer. Maya. My God, what you just did. I became what I was always meant to be, she said, marveling at how different she felt. The royal power had been like wearing armor, protective but heavy. This new magic felt like breathing, as natural as her own heartbeat. The true Luna, Meredith said with deep satisfaction. The first in over 3 centuries. You've just changed the course of our entire species, Your Majesty. Over the following weeks, as word of Magnus' defeat and Maya's transformation spread, wolves began arriving from every corner of the territory and beyond. Not armies this time, but refugees, seekers, those who'd heard whispers that the old ways were returning. Maya and Kael established their new court not in a fortress or palace, but in the rebuilt settlement of Haven, expanded now to accommodate the thousands who'd come seeking a different way of life. Pack hierarchies still existed, but they were no longer rigid caste systems. Strength was measured in many ways: wisdom, compassion, artistic skill, the ability to heal or teach or simply make others laugh. The day Marcus Thorne arrived, Maya was in the new council chambers, working with Elena and the other advisors to draft laws that would protect wolves like her younger self from ever being sold or cast out again. Maya. Marcus stood in the doorway, looking older than she remembered, his face drawn with something that might have been shame. May I speak with you? Maya looked up from her papers, feeling nothing but a mild sadness for the man who'd raised her. Of course. He entered hesitantly, as if expecting to be thrown out at any moment. Behind him came Sarah's sister Emma, who'd been kinder than most during Maya's childhood, and surprisingly, little Tommy Morrison from the old pack, now grown into a young man but still bearing the scars of being rejected for his small wolf form. We came to apologize, Marcus said, the words clearly difficult for him. For how we treated you. For what I did at the auction. For. He swallowed hard. For everything. Maya studied his face, looking for signs of deception but finding only genuine regret. Why now? She asked. Because we were wrong, Emma said, stepping forward. About you, about what makes a wolf valuable, about everything. When we heard what you'd become, what you'd accomplished. She shook her head. We realized how blind we'd been. Tommy nodded earnestly. You saved us all, Maya. Not just from Magnus, but from the whole system that said we were worthless because we were different. Maya felt Kael's presence behind her, a steady warmth that reminded her she didn't have to handle this alone. She stood, moving to face the people who'd once been her family. "I forgive you," she said simply, and watched relief flood their faces. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. You hurt me, all of you, in ways that took years to heal. I can choose to let go of that anger, but I won't pretend it didn't happen." Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand. And I want you to know. I'm proud of you. Proud of what you've become, despite everything we put you through." "Thank you," Maya said. "That, actually means something." They talked for a while longer, not about the past but about the future, the new laws being written, the schools being established for young wolves with unusual gifts, the healing centers where trauma could be addressed rather than ignored. When they finally left, Maya felt a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying lift from her shoulders. "Are you all right?" Kael asked, pulling her into his arms. "Better than all right," Maya replied, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. "I'm free." The mating ceremony took place on the summer solstice, when the moon was full and the magic in the air was thick enough to taste. Wolves from dozens of packs had gathered, along with representatives from other supernatural communities who'd come to witness the union of the true Luna and the rogue king who'd claimed a throne through love rather than conquest. Maya wore a dress of silver silk that seemed to capture moonlight in its folds, while Kael stood beside her in formal leathers that emphasized his powerful frame. But it wasn't their clothes that drew every eye, it was the way they looked at each other, the mate bond visible to every supernatural being present as threads of silver light that bound their souls together. Elena performed the ceremony, her voice carrying across the gathering as she spoke the ancient words that would unite them not just as mates but as the foundation of a new royal line. "Do you, Kael Blackthorne, Prince of the Northern Kingdoms, swear to stand beside this woman as her equal, her partner, and her strength?" "I do," Kael said, his voice steady and sure. "And do you, Maya, true Luna of all werewolf kind, swear to lead our people with wisdom, compassion, and the understanding that true power comes from lifting others up rather than tearing them down?" "I do," Maya replied, feeling the weight and joy of that promise settle into her bones. As Elena declared them mated, silver light erupted from both of them, washing over the assembled crowd in waves of pure magic. But Maya had saved the most important moment for last. She stepped forward, her voice carrying to every corner of the gathering. "Let this be known throughout all the territories. Never again will a wolf be sold for any price. Never again will a child be cast out for being different. Never again will strength be measured only by the ability to dominate others." Her eyes found the faces in the crowd, the former rejects, the outcasts, the ones who'd been told they weren't good enough. "Every wolf has value. Every gift has worth. And anyone who says otherwise will answer to me." The cheer that went up could have been heard for miles, but Maya was focused on Kael's face, on the pride and love shining in his dark eyes. "Ready to change the world, Your Majesty," he murmured against her ear. "Ready to heal it," Maya corrected, then smiled. Together. As the celebration continued around them, as their people danced and sang and reveled in their newfound freedom, neither Maya nor Kael noticed the figure watching from the tree-line. She was tall and pale, with eyes like chips of Arctic ice and an aura of power that made the air around her shimmer with cold. Ancient runes were carved into her armor, and the sword at her side hummed with magic older than the werewolf race itself. Valeria Frostvane, commander of the Winter Court, had been sent to assess the threat posed by the United Werewolf Kingdom. Her queen had grown concerned about the rapid changes in the supernatural balance of power, and Maya's transformation into the true Luna had set off alarms throughout the fairy realm. "Interesting," Valeria murmured, her breath visible in the summer air. "Very interesting indeed." She watched the mated pair for a few moments longer, noting the way their combined power resonated through the magical frequencies, how the very land itself seemed to be healing in response to their presence. Then she melted back into the shadows, already composing the report that would likely determine whether the fairy courts would offer alliance or declare war against the new werewolf monarchy. The age of Magnus was over, but for Maya and Kael, the real challenges were just beginning. In the distance, thunder rumbled across a clear sky, and Maya looked up with the uneasy feeling that storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. But tonight was for celebration, for joy, for the promise of a better tomorrow. The storms, whatever they might bring, could wait until dawn. I know you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notification bell so once a new video drops you will be notified. Don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Share this video to family and friends.